The morning sun, a reluctant prophet, crawled over the thatched rooftops of Oak Ordo, casting long shadows that spoke of ancient truths. The market square stirred in the embrace of a world bustling with life, the cacophony of hawkers and the shuffle of feet weaving an intricate tapestry of abundance. Here, in this throbbing heart of exchange, lay the contradictions of human ingenuity, the overflowing granaries nestled beside empty bellies, the glowing bounty of harvest mocked by emaciated hands that reached, grasping for crumbs. Scarcity, that cunning demon with 1,000 masks, has walked with humankind since the dawn of consciousness. In the days when fire was a whispered secret and the hunter communal rite, scarcity was a stern tutor. It tempered desires, pressing survival's urgency into the marrow of shared lives. Back then, scarcity was honest, ruthless but real, a reflection of the earth's own rhythms. But somewhere in the arc of progress, when men learned to till the soil and pen the wandering flock, scarcity shed its truth and donned the finery of illusion. The elders of Oak Ordo often said, "A lie wears the richest robes." And so it is with the scarcity of today. What began as a natural struggle for sustenance has transmogrified into an artifice, sculpted by greed and preserved by power. Consider, if you will, the swollen silos of modernity, their doors bolted not by necessity but by design. In the halls of glass towers where the language of trade is spun into opaque webs, scarcity is curated, molded like clay in the hands of potters whose kilns burn with the fuel of other men's despair. In these times, hunger and poverty dance, not as shadows of what the earth cannot yield, but as specters of what man refuses to share. It is a bitter irony, one that even the gods might laugh at in their celestial revelry, that in an age where machines hum with productive prowess, human hands still toil for crumbs. The irony runs deep, like the streams that snake beneath the surface, hidden but forceful, carving a quiet rebellion in their wake. The market of Oak Ordo bore witness to this paradox. A vendor, her face furrowed with ears of barter, spread before her wares of yam and pepper. Yet she, like many others, knew the anguish of days when her children cried for bread her hands could not buy. Across the way, the palm wine tapper sat idle, his barrels brimming but his pockets hollow. The currency of plenty lay dormant, locked behind invisible walls of inequity. "Why must we starve in the midst of such harvest?" asked the griot one evening by the village fire. His voice, honeyed with the wisdom of generations, rose above the crackle of wood. "The gods gave us enough. It is man who sharpens the blade of want." Quote. And what sharper blade exists than the systems that institutionalize scarcity? The griot's lament stretched far beyond Oak Ordo, a lamentation not just for the village, but for the world. The architects of modern economies, faceless, shrouded in the abstraction of markets and policies, have learned to manipulate scarcity into a gilded weapon. With it, they edge their dominion upon the masses. The stockpiles of grain rotting in silos, the rivers dammed to the point of drought, the inventions left dormant in the patent walls, these are not the failings of nature but the schemes of men. Yet, there remains a question as stubborn as the yam's root: why? Why persist in this charade, this grim theater where wealth is hoarded while poverty multiplies? Perhaps it is fear, a vestige of that ancient instinct to hoard against the winter's chill. Or perhaps it is greed, that insatiable beast that whispers sweetly of power and dominion. The griot's words still hung in the air as the villagers dispersed, their thoughts heavy with the weight of understanding. The illusion of scarcity had been named, its mask pulled aside. Yet to see the demon is not to slay it. The journey to abundance is a long one, winding and fraught with obstacles. It demands not just a redistribution of wealth, but a reimagining of values, a departure from the fear that binds and blinds. In the distance, the moon rose, a solitary witness to the folly and brilliance of humankind. It watched as the market quieted, the shadows lengthening over its many stories. Somewhere in the silence, a resolution began to stir, as faint and fragile as the first light of dawn. Scarcity, after all, is an illusion, a shadow. And shadows, when confronted by light, must yield. Chapter 2: The Weight of Wealth and Power. The palm vine moon hung low, casting its muted glow over the teeming city, a city alive yet laden, a body of groaning limbs and dreams denied. Its streets bore witness to an unending dance of contradictions, the opulence of the few juxtaposed against the silent endurance of the many. From the pinnacle of their ivory towers, the masters of golden guile surveyed the world as though ordained to reign, their laughter curling through the night like the smoke of an extinguished flame. Here, the weight of wealth was not merely a lecher's boast, but a tangible thing, a shackle for some, a scepter for others. Beneath their feet stretched rivers of wealth, siphoned through veins of sweat and ingenuity, yet these rivers fed only the gilded troughs of the elite. The rest, the 99%, whose hands shaped this world, whose backs bent to bear its burdens, remained hungry, their creativity consumed by the machinery of inequity. At dawn, the bazaars came alive, a cacophony of bargaining voices and shuffling feet. Yet within this chorus, one could discern the quiet lamentation of dreams deferred. The market women, with their wares spread wide like offerings to indifferent gods, spoke of ambition strangled by circumstance. Ah, what is left for us when the sky itself is sold? One would mutter, her voice heavy with a bitterness that no amount of kola nut could soften. Meanwhile, in their mansions built of marble and conceit, the 1% feasted. Their banquets were not mere meals but performances, displays of consumption so ostentatious they mocked the very earth that bore them. Wines from distant lands flowed in rivers, their origins as distant to these diners as the hands that tilled the soil. Here, power manifested not just in what was owned, but in the ability to waste what others could not fathom possessing. Yet the spectacle of their lives was not self-sustaining. No empire of excess exists in a vacuum, and the mechanisms of inequality hummed with precision, churning out policies that sanctified privilege. The halls of governance became altars where the wealthy supplicated their own reflection, enshrining laws that ensured their dominion. Tax codes whispered sweet nothings to the rich, while austerity measures tightened the noose around the necks of the poor. Even culture itself, that most subtle of tyrants, played its part. Stories of the self-made man wove themselves into the fabric of public consciousness, silencing those who dared to question how many were trampled in the climb to the top. The wealthy became gods, their accumulation of riches framed as moral victories. To resist them was to resist the natural order, or so the story went. Still, resistance simmered, a quiet fire in the hearts of the many. It flickered in the union meetings held under the cover of night, in the whispered conversations of workers as they passed factory gates. Though the systems of power seemed insurmountable, there was a growing awareness that wealth and influence, no matter how vast, could not suppress the collective will forever. The weight of wealth and power pressed heavy on the land, yet beneath it, a tremor began. It was the tremor of voices reclaiming their agency, of hands reaching across divides to build anew. In the city's labyrinth of streets and lives, the question was not if the scales would tip, but when and at what cost. Above, the palm vine moon faded into the embrace of dawn, its silvery light giving way to the unflinching gaze of the sun. As it rose, it illuminated both the excesses of the few and the potential of the many, a dichotomy poised, like the city itself, on the edge of transformation. Chapter 3, A Planet of Abundance. The earth stirs beneath the soles of our feet, an ancient titan bearing riches untold, a cradle of dreams in soil and sky. Let us speak no longer of scarcity as the lodestar of our existence. Instead, we turn to the infinite expanse of abundance, a vast and glittering truth obscured by the shadows of greed, mismanagement, and myopia. What greater folly than to inhabit a planet teeming with life's bounty, yet to chain ourselves with the rhetoric of lack. The winds whisper their ceaseless song, promising renewal, if only we attune ourselves to their rhythm. The sun, a blazing sentinel, stretches its golden fingers across the firmament, bestowing energy more boundless than any crude fuel. Here, in this daily miracle, lies the secret to unshackling ourselves from the tyranny of diminishing resources. Each ray is a stanza in the hymn of abundance, urging humanity to seize the tools of innovation and sculpt a future where power flows unendingly, as natural as breath. The oceans, vast and enigmatic, heave with potential, their depths a trove of sustenance and energy. Yet, how often do we gaze upon their shimmering surface and see only peril? The tides pulse with kinetic promise, the currents hum with possibilities yet untapped. Beneath the waves lies a kingdom of biodiversity, the coral reefs a kaleidoscope of survival strategies honed over millennia. Could we not learn from their example, to coexist symbiotically with the forces of nature rather than plundering them? Then, let us lift our gaze beyond the cerulean vault of the heavens, to the stars that have guided navigators and poets alike. Space, the final frontier, is no mere backdrop for our terrestrial struggles. It is an invitation, a beckoning promise of exploration and renewal. The moon, our ancient companion, holds secrets in its dust, and asteroids glide silently through the void, laden with minerals that could end the quarrels of scarcity on Earth. Imagine, if you will, a civilization unburdened by the petty squabbles over what is finite, as it embraces the cosmos and its infinite expanse. In understanding our place in the universe, we grasp a simple truth: scarcity is a narrative of the mind, a veil drawn by those who benefit from division and fear. To adopt the lens of abundance is not merely to dream, it is to act, to innovate, to reimagine. It is to see the planet not as a waning repository of finite resources but as a dynamic, living entity whose gifts are renewed with each sunrise and ebbing tide. The challenge, then, is clear: will we continue to claw at the dirt with desperation, or shall we rise to meet the horizon, where possibilities shimmer like the heat mirage on a distant savanna? The age of abundance beckons. Let us, as custodians of this blue planet, step boldly into its embrace. Chapter 4: Sharing the Solar Table. Building on the vision of abundance, this chapter proposes practical ways to reorganize society based on equitable distribution according to need. From universal basic income to decentralized energy systems, it explores bold innovations. The chapter emphasizes that human creativity and cooperation, not competition, can guide us toward a more harmonious existence. Chapter 5: Cosmic Unity and the Eternal Matter. The night sky, punctured by the silver tiers of stars, stretches infinite and unbroken, a vast canvas that mocks the narrow walls of our earthly quarrels. To gaze upwards is to confront the unfathomable, an expanse so immense that it renders the petty scaffolding of human ambition weightless, inconsequential. And yet, within this infinitude lies a paradox: humanity, so small, is bound by the same eternal matter that fuels the suns and spins the galaxies. In the beginning was matter, eternal and immutable, dancing to rhythms older than time. The cosmos speaks in languages we have barely begun to understand, in cadences that hum through the molecules of our being. Each atom in our bodies once blazed in the heart of a star, a reminder that we are not merely of this earth but of the universe entire. What arrogance, then, to cleave ourselves apart from one another, to erect borders on a globe spun by a hand more ancient and more vast than any we can name. Our modern age, with its clever artifices and fleeting brilliance, has trapped us in the shallows of individualism. We laud the self-made man, the singular genius, as though any creation could emerge unconnected to the web of existence. Yet, a tree does not grow without soil, nor does it bear fruit without sun and rain. This is the cosmic lesson. We are bound together, not only by necessity but by design. The universe itself whispers unity, a harmony woven into its very fabric. In the orbits of the planets and the spiral arms of galaxies, there is diversity without discord. Does the moon vie with the earth for prominence? Does the comet resent the sun for its borrowed light? These celestial bodies move in their appointed paths, honoring the balance that sustains them. Humanity, too, must learn this lesson, lest our small quarrels unravel the fragile thread of existence. Yet we resist. We cling to divisions, of race, creed, nation, as though they are shields against the void. But the void is indifferent, its silence both humbling and liberating. To rise above these petty distinctions is not to deny our differences but to embrace them as parts of a greater whole. Unity does not demand sameness, rather, it flourishes in the symphony of diversity. Let each voice sing its unique note, and let the song be stronger for it. And what of responsibility? To gaze into the cosmos is to confront not only our smallness but also our capacity. In this speck of a planet, spinning in the void, we hold the power to shape the future, not just for ourselves but for the generations yet to come. This is our sacred charge, to steward the earth, to safeguard its fragile ecosystems, and to cultivate a consciousness that extends beyond the boundaries of the self. To achieve this, we must shift the axis of our thinking. No longer can we afford the luxury of narrow, self-serving worldviews. We must instead embrace a vision of collective responsibility, a recognition that our fates are intertwined. The survival of one is the survival of all. The triumph of one is the triumph of all. And so, let this be a call, not of arms but of spirits, a summons to rise above the limitations we have imposed upon ourselves. Let us see, in the endless expanse of the cosmos, not a void but a mirror, one that reflects our potential as a unified species. The stars, indifferent as they are to our struggles, hold the promise of infinite possibility. They beckon us not to conquer but to collaborate, not to divide but to dream. For in the end, it is not the individual flame but the collective blaze that will light the way forward. Humanity's destiny lies not in its fragments but in its whole. Let us rise to meet it, bound by the eternal matter that makes us, the infinite cosmos that holds us, and the shared dream of a future worthy of the stars.